Eh bien, monsieur, we have before us a most delicate operation. Transferring the person of Poirot to the salon car, where the suspects, they are all assembled. Poirot is ready for the ordeal. Mesdames et messieurs, there are three possible solutions of this case. There is the solution concocted for the benefit of the Yugoslavian police, who were expected to take up the investigation. A little play that was then embellished with several improvisations. When I, Erkül Pουαρό, unexpectedly appeared on the stage. Monsieur Ratchet had received the threats from an unknown enemy. Mademoiselle Marso? The tone of these letters suggests an enmity born in the American underworld, of which Monsieur Ratchet was once a part. A former colleague in one of his kidnapping schemes? Who knows? We have the evidence of a detective Monsieur Ratchet hired to protect him.
The detective is Cyrus Hardman, posing as a salesman of typewriter ribbons.
The evidence of Monsieur Hardman, who is indeed a detective hired to protect Monsieur Ratchet, gives to us a description of a small, dark man with a... Monsieur Ratchet had received the threats from an unknown enemy. Mademoiselle Marso? The tone of these letters suggests an enmity born in the American underworld, of which Monsieur Ratchet was once a part. A former colleague in one of his kidnapping schemes? Who knows? We have the evidence of a detective Monsieur Ratchet hired to protect him.
The detective is Cyrus Hardman, posing as a salesman of typewriter ribbons.
The evidence of Monsieur Hardman, who is indeed a detective hired to protect Monsieur Ratchet, gives to us a description of a small, dark man with a womanish voice. Except for the voice, this description would only fit two men on this train.
Matteo, the Athens-Paris coach attendant, and Dr. Constantine.
Yet Monsieur Hardman's vigilance during the night shows that no one could have passed from the Athens-Paris coach to the Calais coach without his seeing them. So anyone in that coach must be exonerated. The enemy actually came aboard the train at Belgrade one of two ways.
Through the door left unbolted by Monsieur McQueen.
This enemy was disguised, leaving behind a button in Madame Hubbard's room when he used her connecting door. Mademoiselle, the disguise? A passkey was found in the pocket of this uniform, giving the murderer access to Ratchet's room. Ratchet was under the influence of a dose of his sleeping draught, light enough to wake him, but strong enough to prevent him from struggling as the killer left through the connecting door.
Masterman confirmed the dosage of the sleeping draught.
Oui, he did. Well, the murder weapon is obvious. Mademoiselle?
It is a stiletto, the type of knife carried by the criminal type in America called the mafiosi.
The killer planned to leave the train at the next station after committing his crime. Show to them the evidence supporting this, mademoiselle. Exact. The avalanche prevented him from reaching Broad. Even so, he went through with the crime and then hid himself.
The killer hid in an empty room in the Athens-Paris coach.
At first, in the Athens-Paris coach, and then later it is in the hut, Mademoiselle found the uniform and the stiletto. But the killer had fled. He may have escaped down the mountain, or he may have come to his just reward somewhere out there in the snow. I think you will agree that we had followed the trail as easily as if we were tracking the footprints in the snow. Well, it is plausible. It certainly fits the most obvious set of facts. I applaud the mastermind who hides behind such an innocent face. The second solution asked more of the little Gressels, not only of Poirot, but those of Mademoiselle Marceau and Dr. Constantine as well. It was hidden most carefully. The unlikely accident of a means of communicating with the outside world, a part filled most ably by my dear friend Barnaby, made the truth, or at least part of it, easier to uncover. But I flatter myself that enough clues were found right here on this train that such communications were almost always but collaborations of conclusions that I had already reached. So, mademoiselle, we will begin again. First, I will speak to you of time. When did Monsieur Ratchet meet his end? I suspect Mademoiselle Marceau has the theory.
Later than 1:15 a.m. The murderer is not the assassin in the attendant's uniform, but the woman in the scarlet kimono.
Let us examine each possibility in turn. 10:40 p.m. or earlier? No, I think not. Mademoiselle Olsen spoke to Ratchet from the doorway at 10:40 p.m., but she never went inside. It conjures the image most bizarre of her throwing a knife at him 12 times from the doorway. And how does she retrieve it? Is there string attached to the handle? No. No, that is a solution of a most lurid sort. 12:37 a.m.? A more interesting possibility. Monsieur McQueen states that Ratchet spoke no languages other than English, and yet the voice answered Michel in French. Still, I think this was simply a performance for the benefit of Poirot, one of the little improvisations. I was meant to see through it and say, no. Monsieur Ratchet, he was already dead by 12:37. He could not have cried out.
The broken watch said 1:15.
Oui, it did. And it fits with the time of Madame Hubbard's visitor. Now I digress for the reminiscence. I observed to Mademoiselle Marceau that one meets many classes and nationalities when traveling aboard the Express. I asked her to imagine whether such an assembly would ever likely to be collected under any other conditions. And mademoiselle, what was your reply?
In America.
C'est ça. Only in America will you find a household composed of so many nationalities. Look about you. As our investigation progressed, it became clear that 9 passengers on this train are connected in some way to the Armstrong kidnapping. Who have we connected to that case, mademoiselle?
Colonel Arbuthnot, Princess Dragomirov, Cyrus Hardman,
Mademoiselle,
Antonio Foscarelli, Mary Debenham, Hector McQueen, Edward Masterman, Pierre Michel.
Can you really?
Countess Andrenyi, Greta Olsen, Hildegard Schmidt. None of the above.
Précisément. These four alone, amongst the occupants of the Calais coach, would appear to have no direct connection with the Armstrong case. Yet I was struck by the curious coincidence that everyone in the Calais coach had an alibi. And these alibis are sometimes corroborated even by those not connected to the Armstrong affair. One of you stated to Mademoiselle Marceau that while Monsieur Ratchet got what he deserved, you would have preferred to see him properly hanged. The trial by jury is a sound system. Who said that, mademoiselle?
Colonel Arbuthnot.
Just so. Colonel Arbuthnot. Now that struck a chord with Poirot. I sat back and thought, a jury is composed of 12 people. There are 12 passengers in the Calais coach, discounting myself and Mademoiselle Marceau. Ratchet, he was stabbed 12 times. And the reason the Calais coach was filled in the middle of the winter was explained. All, I repeat, all of the passengers were in on it. They had to be. No alibi could be left to the whim of a stranger. Did this solution explain everything? Let us see. What were the clues that pointed to the first solution, mademoiselle?
All of these clues agree with the first solution.
Oui. And now, of course, my attention focused on Monsieur Hartmann, for he, the apparent outsider, had provided a key element in this artificial solution of an unknown enemy. How to explain his complicity? And then I remembered that Mademoiselle Marceau had told to me 2 suggestive moments during 2 different interviews with Monsieur Hartmann.
When he said the snow was bright.
Mais oui, the snow has not been very bright today. The sky, it is overcast. And in his apology, he mentions his fondness for French girls. Countess Andrenyi told us that the nursemaid, she was French. Her name was Suzanne. Our young friend Barnaby Lewis confirms via the ham radio that her full name was Suzanne Ferrier, and that she was born near Paris. So, it is not so much a leap, I think, to wonder if perhaps the man from New York and the French girl working there might not have formed the attachment.
I've been a detective for almost 20 years, Monsieur Poirot, but I'm in admiration of you. Yeah, Suzanne and I were going to ask her uncle if we could get hitched. He was her guardian. And the kidnapping and everything. It was too much for her.
Her uncle, monsieur? And his name?
Oh, jeez, I can't say I remember.
A detective for almost 20 years? And you never even knew the name of your fiancé's guardian?
No, probably got it written down somewhere back in New York.
Enough of this foolishness. I can guess his name right now, and so I expect can Mademoiselle Marceau.
Monsieur Ferrier.
The picture in your valise, it is that of you, your sister, and her daughter Suzanne?
Oui, monsieur. After my sister and her husband died in a car crash, I raised Suzanne as my own child.
And so, that leaves only one.
Me? If the attendant is one of your killers, Mr. Poirot, that makes you 12. You don't need me.
No, madame. I have come to the odd conclusion that the person who has taken no part in the crime is the one who would be considered most likely to do so. I refer to Countess Andrenyi. Her husband swore on his honor she did not leave her room last night. A count from a noble family? A rising young star in the Hungarian diplomatic service? Such a man does not swear upon his honor lightly. No, it is much more probable that he tells the truth. And it is the devoted husband who, so to speak, takes his wife's place. So you see, madame, we are back to 11 without you.
Well, I never. Wait until my daughter hears about this.
Why not tell her now? She is sitting there right beside you, Madame Arden. You are the instigator, or the director, I should say, of this entire performance. You, who Mademoiselle Debenham so rightly called the strongest character among us. And there you have it. Does this second solution explain everything? Let us see. Mademoiselle Marceau, what was the real murder weapon?
No, that isn't right.
But of course, a drama planned this carefully does not include the blood-stained stiletto with the fingerprints of some unknown? No, that is merely a prop, as were the 2 threatening letters. The burned note, of course, was a real threat. The conspirators most assuredly did not want this murder tied to the Armstrong kidnapping, and the true weapon, with no incriminating mark upon it, might never have been found if it had been thrown inches further.
Bloody steak knives aren't balanced properly for throwing. My hat's off to you, though, Miss Marceau. When I saw where it landed, I wasn't about to crawl out there and end up at the bottom of that ravine. Took some nerve doing what you did, and there's no denying it.
Hear, hear.
So, the improbable differences in the stab wounds is now explained. 2 so-called clues were dropped in the dead man's compartment. Mademoiselle? The pipe cleaner, incriminating Colonel Arbuthnot, who had one of the strongest alibis and whose connection to the Armstrong family was probably the hardest to prove. And the second clue found in the room, mademoiselle? The handkerchief, incriminating Princess Dragomirov, who by virtue of her frail physique and the alibi given by her maid and Michel was practically in an unassailable position. Then there was the clue found at the shepherd's hut with the incriminating fingerprints. Do you have it, mademoiselle? With Matteo's incriminating fingerprints on it.
Not precisely cricket, you know, Tonio. To incriminate an innocent man.
Cyrus could swear Matteo had not entered the Calais coach. Michel informed us the radio was in the baggage car, and I went to put it out of commission. I did not want to destroy the equipment. It must have taken him much saving to purchase. So I only smashed the telegraph key. Signorina, you are a miracle worker for sure. To get the radio working again. I know about these things. That was a stroke of a genius.
Stick to the point, Monsieur Foscarelli.
With great pleasure. The padlock was just hanging there. I found the snowshoes earlier, and then the shepherd's hut. I was supposed to find a good place for the uniform and the stiletto, and the hut was perfect. But I had to break the lock to enter. All I did was go and get the padlock on the radio crate. I didn't mean to point the finger at Matteo.
The other red herring was not a herring at all, but it was certainly red. Mademoiselle?
And then to put it in my valise was not a nice trick.
The kimono is mine, monsieur. And mademoiselle, I had no intention of trying to incriminate you. I had to put it someplace, and I thought it would be amusing if you found it there.
Ah oui, you enjoy your little games, Countess. Mademoiselle Freebody, indeed. Well, Madame Arden?
I always fancied myself in comedy parts. Bravo, Mr. Poirot. Well done.
Applause from an actress of your stature is praise indeed, madame.
We were all at the house, a house filled with almost unendurable pain and sadness. The Perkinson brothers were dead, but Cassetti had got clean away. We decided then and there that the sentence of death that Cassetti had escaped would be carried out. Little did we know how many years would pass, how many false leads Mr. Hardman would track down before Cassetti would be found.
Whatever country my work took me to, no matter how tough the case, I always saved plenty of time to try and pick up the trail. But he kept on the move. Brazil, Mexico, most of Europe. Ratchet was only the last of a string of aliases.
Then Mr. Michel wrote to me. It was he who, quite by accident, had recognized Cassetti traveling aboard the Istanbul to Calais train. When we learned the man, now calling himself Ratchet, frequently traveled to the Middle East aboard the train, we knew we could have some control of the scene of our planned execution. It took months, but in time Ratchet hired both Hector and Masterman.
One of us would have been enough. 2 were better.
Hector handled all of Ratchet's travel arrangements. With Michel's help, passage was booked on the same train he would be using to return from his latest excursion to the Orient. The rest you seem to know.
Oui, madame. Indeed, the rest Poirot knows.
But I don't understand. You've uncovered everything. We know we did it. How can there be another solution?
Simplicity itself. There is among you one who is not who he pretends to be. With the help of Mademoiselle Marceau, I will now present you with those clues which fit neither solution so far proposed, and present you with a truth that will surprise even you. I know some of you suspected something was not quite right, but let us now look at the clues that fit neither solution so far. Madame Schmidt says she saw the phantom attendant, but we know now it was sheer invention. Yet we have the testimony of an independent witness who says he saw the non-existent small dark attendant actually getting on the train. Mademoiselle?
The engineer.
Oui, the engineer while the train was in the Belgrade station. And then there is the crate of Monsieur Ratchet and its unknown occupant. What clues associate themselves with that crate, mademoiselle?
The pile of books.
Oui, the uniform I think worn by the person the engineer saw. The pile of books mademoiselle believes were useful in the planning of the crime, yet no one has mentioned them. And the fact that the person with access to that key would be in the best position to tell us something of the occupant of that crate. And lastly, there is the little matter of the kidnapping of Mademoiselle Marceau. Mademoiselle Marso, while they enjoy this brief moment before you render your final decision, let us, you and I, see whether you are up to the challenge that Poirot presented to you when our investigation began. Let us check the progress report you have been keeping in your scrapbook. Mademoiselle Marso, Poirot, he is impressed. You are courageous. You face the dangers without flinching. You solve almost every puzzle that confronts you, overcome almost every obstacle with enthusiasm and good humor. It has been my extreme pleasure to work with you and to match the wits with you. I am sure that with the knowledge you now have of my methods, you could do even better, should you ever find yourself faced with another mystery to solve. You are the representative of the train company, Mademoiselle Marso. You have been instrumental in assembling the evidence that pointed to the solutions I have now shared. And you have been ill-used.
I am truly sorry, mademoiselle. I left you all of your belongings in that box, except the one I needed back, the key to the security room. You now know why. My precious cargo had to eat. You have proven to be most ingenious. Twice you almost discovered my secret passenger. I left the parasol for you to discover. I had no doubt you would free yourself. If not, I would have found an anonymous way to inform someone of your whereabouts.
I understand why you did it.
As Monsieur Perkinson so rightly observes, you have proven your grey cells to be almost equal to those of Hercule Poirot. So, what do you say, Mademoiselle Marso? Which solution shall we present to the Yugoslavian police in broad? Silence, s'il vous plaît. It is now time to hear what Mademoiselle Marso has decided.
Here are my thoughts on the first solution. It is not the truth, but fits the facts, at least one set of facts, and it will be the simplest by far to explain. My opinion of the second solution is this. It is at least most of the truth, as much as 12 people in this car knew. They are self-confessed murderers, and yet, no, that word is wrong. Justice was done here. Of a kind, perhaps not the justice I would have preferred. In that, I agree with Colonel Arbuthnot. But still, can there be anyone, knowing Ratchet and knowing these people as well as I now do after only a few hours, who can't see the rightness of their cause? These are my feelings about the third solution. It is the whole truth. More heartache than even these 12 people knew. And it must stop somewhere, mustn't it? There are lives to build and rebuild here. I think of Greta's words on her postcard, and of the family that had one last day in the sun at Coney Island before the storm engulfed them. I think they all, including Monsieur Perkinson, deserve a chance in the sun again. Therefore, it is my belief, Monsieur Poirot, the first theory you put forward was the correct one. An unknown enemy of Monsieur Ratchet, whom the murdered man feared, sneaked aboard the train disguised as an attendant and is responsible for the murder. Unfortunately, he is still at large, or lies frozen in a snowbank somewhere awaiting the spring thaw. I suggest that is the solution we offer to the Yugoslavian police when we arrive in Broad.
Dr. Constantine?
Even if I did not owe you and Mademoiselle Marso so much, I have learned to leave such matters to those best qualified to decide. I, of course, accept Mademoiselle Marso's decision.
Why? Exactly.
Yeah, that's my view. What did I tell you?
Yes, thank you.
Monsieur Poirot, your ankle!
It feels much better. And Poirot? He has been cooped up in his room far too long. He has the need of some fresh air.